The city of Vera was alive with lights, towers, and endless sound. Ships landed on glowing platforms, traders shouted in dozens of languages, and diplomats walked in long robes, surrounded by guards. But far below the shining buildings, in the cold alleys between broken walls, lived those no one wanted to see. Among them was a young alien girl, small, thin, and tired. Her hair was tangled, her skin pale under the neon glow, her clothes torn and dirty. She had been on the streets for many weeks, with no family and no shelter. She begged near markets, stole crumbs when she had to, and slept on old sheets of metal under bridges. Her eyes were wide and bright, but behind them was hunger and fear. Every day she watched the rich pass by, the humans with clean uniforms, the alien nobles with golden rings, and the diplomats with bodyguards who never looked at the poor. To them, she was invisible, just another shadow in the street. But fate is strange. On one cold evening, as the girl walked barefoot across a cracked street, she noticed something shining under a broken light. It was small, rectangular, with glowing blue symbols. She picked it up carefully, wiping the dust away. Her heart skipped. It was a wallet, but not like any she had seen before. This was a diplomat's wallet, heavy with credits, identification seals, and a silver insignia glowing faintly in the dark. The kind of item worth more than all she had seen in her life. For a long moment, she stood frozen. She imagined buying food, a warm blanket, maybe even paying a gang to protect her. She imagined safety, and for the first time in weeks, she felt hope. Her hands shook as she clutched the wallet against her chest. But then she heard voices. Two alien boys nearby, older and stronger. They had seen her find the wallet. "Hey, street rat, give it here," one of them shouted, his eyes hungry. She ran. Her bare feet slapped against the wet ground as she dashed into narrow alleys. The boys chased her, yelling threats, their shadows stretching in the neon light. Her small body slipped through cracks and gaps they could not follow. Finally, breathless, she pressed her back against a wall, clutching the wallet tight. She closed her eyes and whispered, "What should I do?" Her stomach growled, reminding her she had not eaten properly in days. But then she remembered her mother's voice from long ago. "Honesty will bring light, even in the darkest place." The words echoed in her mind. Tears stung her eyes. She looked at the wallet again, at the shining insignia of the diplomat. If she returned it, maybe no one would believe her. Maybe they would beat her. Maybe they would laugh. But if she kept it, she would lose something greater, her last piece of honor. She stood up slowly, her legs weak, but her heart stronger. She whispered to herself, "I will return it." And so the girl, with nothing but hope in her heart, walked toward the tall buildings in the center of the city. Above her, the towers of the diplomats glowed like silver stars, guarded by soldiers and machines. Every step felt heavy, every corner felt dangerous, but she did not stop. She held the wallet close, her fingers gripping it, as if it were the only thing keeping her alive. The night was full of shadows, but inside her, a light began to grow. And somewhere in that vast city, a powerful diplomat was searching for what he had lost, not knowing that a homeless alien girl, small and forgotten, carried his future in her hands. The streets were silent as she reached the gates of the shining building. Her journey had only just begun. The gates of the diplomat quarter stood taller than any wall she had ever seen. They were made of shining metal, carved with strange alien symbols that glowed faint blue in the night. Guards in heavy armor stood at every corner, their weapons humming with energy, their eyes scanning every movement. The girl stopped a few steps away, her small figure hidden in the shadow of a broken pillar. Her heart pounded. Every thought inside her told her to turn back. A street child like her had no right to stand before such power. If the guards saw her, they might strike her, call her a thief, or worse. She clutched the wallet tighter against her chest, her hands shaking. Behind her the city whispered. Shadows moved, gangs prowled, and hungry eyes searched for weakness. If she turned back, they would take it from her. If she stayed, fear might swallow her whole. But her mother's words echoed again, and she whispered them softly under her breath. Honesty will bring light, even in the darkest place. She stepped forward. The guards turned instantly, weapons raised, their armor flashing under the neon glow. "Halt, street rat. What are you doing here?" one barked, his voice hard like stone. Her throat went dry, but she lifted the wallet with both hands. "I found this. It belongs to your master," she said, her voice trembling but clear. The guards exchanged a look. They laughed, a low, cruel sound. "You expect us to believe a beggar like you did not steal it," the taller one sneered. Another guard leaned closer, his visor reflecting her tired face. "She's lying. These rats always lie." The girl shook her head fiercely. "No, I found it. I did not take anything. It is all inside. Please, give it to him," she pleaded. The guards moved closer, towering above her. One reached for the wallet, but she pulled it back instinctively, clutching it to her chest. "Please, let me give it to him myself," she whispered, her voice almost breaking. The guard stiffened. For a moment there was silence. Only the hum of their weapons filled the air. Then, a calm voice broke through. "Let her pass." The guards froze and turned. From the great doorway of the building, a figure stepped forward, tall and cloaked in dark blue robes. His face was lined with age and wisdom, his eyes glowing faintly golden in the dim light. The diplomat himself had come. The girl stared, her breath caught. She had seen diplomats from afar, walking with pride, commanding respect. But this one stood different, calm yet sharp, his presence filling the air like thunder before a storm. The guards bowed slightly, lowering their weapons, but their eyes still burned with suspicion. The diplomat moved closer, his gaze fixed on the girl. His voice was quiet but strong. "What do you hold?" he asked. She raised her trembling hands and offered the wallet. "I found it. I wanted to give it back," she said, her eyes wide and honest. The diplomat's golden eyes softened as he took the wallet from her small hands. He opened it carefully, scanning the contents. Every seal, every coin, every encrypted credit chip was untouched. The silence grew heavy. The guards leaned in, expecting him to expose her as a thief, expecting punishment. Instead, the diplomat looked back at the girl and did something no one expected. He knelt, lowering himself so his eyes met hers. "Tell me your name, child," he said, his voice gentler now. She hesitated, and used to being asked, and used to being seen. My name is Lyra," she whispered. "Lyra," he repeated softly, as if testing the sound. "You could have taken everything in this wallet, yet you returned it. Why?" She blinked, unsure how to answer. At last she whispered, "Because it is not mine." For a long moment he said nothing. Then, a smile touched his lips, rare and genuine. "In all the galaxy, honesty like this is rare," he said, loud enough for his guards to hear. He stood, lifting his robe with grace, and turned to his men. "Bring her food, water, and shelter at once." The guards stared, shocked. This beggar, Excellency," one stammered. The diplomat's eyes flashed, sharp as lightning. "Yes, this beggar," he replied firmly. "From this night, she is no longer forgotten." The girl stood frozen, her chest tight, her eyes filling with tears. For the first time in her life, someone had looked at her not as trash, not as dirt, but as something more. Her small act of kindness had reached the ears of power. And the galaxy, though it did not know it yet, would soon feel the echo of that choice. The heavy doors of the diplomat's residence opened, tall and wide, glowing with pale light from within. Lyra stepped inside slowly, her bare feet almost afraid to touch the polished floor. The guards watched her carefully, their faces still hard, their eyes suspicious. But the diplomat walked ahead without fear, his blue robe flowing like a wave behind him. The hall was vast, shining with glass walls that looked out into the city. Strange banners hung from the ceiling, glowing with alien patterns she did not understand. Servants moved quietly across the floor, carrying trays of food and scrolls of data. Everywhere there was order, power, and silence. Lyra felt small, like a shadow drifting into a world not made for her. Her stomach growled, but she held herself still, her hands clasped tight in front of her. The diplomat turned, noticing her unease. "Do not be afraid, Lyra," he said, his voice deep but calm. "You are safe here." Safe, she thought. It had been so long since she felt that word meant anything. Her eyes flicked to the guards standing at the edge of the hall, their armor gleaming, their weapons resting but never far. She wondered if their safety was the same as his. Still, she nodded silently. The diplomat stopped near a long table filled with fruit, bread, and shining glasses of water. He motioned for her to sit, but she hesitated. Her mind told her this was not for her. Street rats did not belong at tables like these. But her hunger overpowered her fear. When he nodded again, she lowered herself carefully into the chair. Food was placed before her. Soft bread, roasted meat, and a bowl of glowing alien fruit. She looked at it as though it were treasure. Her hands trembled as she picked up a piece. The first bite filled her with warmth, tears forming in her eyes. The diplomat watched quietly, not speaking until she had eaten enough to calm her hunger. Then he leaned forward, his golden eyes fixed on her. "Lyra, I must ask you again, why did you return this wallet?" His voice was steady, but there was a sharpness beneath, a weight of meaning. She swallowed hard. "I could not keep it. It was not mine," she whispered. The diplomat tilted his head, as though studying something rare. "Many would have taken it. Even the powerful, even the noble," he said. "But you, a child of the streets, chose differently." His words hung heavy in the air. Lyra lowered her gaze, unsure if he praised her or tested her. Silence stretched between them until he finally leaned back. "You understand that what you did was dangerous," he said, his tone shifting. "If another had found you with this, you might not have lived." She nodded faintly. "Yes, I know," she whispered, her small voice steady. "Then why still return it?" he asked again, sharper now. Her eyes lifted, and though they were tired, they burned with something pure. "Because I wanted to be honest, even if it hurt me." The diplomat's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. "Honesty," he repeated softly, as if the word was older than both of them. He turned toward the great window, looking out into the city below. "Do you know, Lyra, that this city was built on lies, on power taken without truth?" he said, his voice almost distant. "Every wall here hides secrets. Every tower hides greed." Lyra said nothing, but her small hands curled into fists. She had lived those lies, felt them in the hunger of her stomach, in the cold nights where no one cared. The diplomat turned back to her, his gaze sharp again. "And yet here you are, a child who owns nothing, carrying more honor than most rulers I know." The guards shifted uncomfortably, not used to such words spoken of a beggar. But the diplomat did not care. He placed the wallet on the table, pushing it toward her. "You did not take anything, so I will give you something instead," he said. "Not credits, not coins, but a chance." Lyra looked at him, confused. "A chance for what?" she asked, her voice trembling. "A chance to step out of the shadows," he said. "To learn, to grow, to no longer be unseen." Her breath caught. Was this real or another test? She thought of the alleys, of hunger, of the eyes that always looked past her. Now this man, powerful and strange, offered her a door she never knew could exist. Her lips parted, but no words came. The diplomat stood, his robes sweeping across the floor. "You returned what was mine," he said. "Now I will return something that should be yours, dignity." He turned to the guards, his voice firm and commanding. "From this day, she is under my protection." The words echoed through the hall like thunder. The guards bowed stiffly, though their eyes burned with disbelief. Lyra sat frozen, her heart racing. She did not yet understand what his promise would mean, but she felt the weight of it, heavy and bright. And somewhere beyond the walls, in the dark alleys of the city, whispers already began. A beggar girl had stepped into a diplomat's hall and left with his protection. The story would not stop there, for the galaxy was listening. Even if it did not yet know, the news spread through the diplomat's residence faster than fire through dry grass. Servants whispered in the corridors, guards exchanged uneasy glances, and merchants in the outer halls carried tales into the streets. A beggar girl, a homeless alien child, had been given protection by one of the most powerful diplomats of the quadrant. No one could understand it, and yet everyone wanted to know more. Lyra, still dressed in torn clothes, sat on the edge of a soft bed in a small chamber prepared for her. She had never felt sheets so warm or walls so safe. Her hands trembled as she touched the blanket, afraid it might vanish, afraid this was all a dream. For the first time in weeks, her stomach was full, and her body no longer shivered from the cold. But safety came with fear. She heard footsteps outside, muffled voices, sharp words that she could not catch. Some voices spoke with kindness, others with anger. She knew many people did not want her here. The world of the powerful was not meant for the forgotten. Meanwhile, the diplomat sat in his private chamber, speaking to a council through a glowing screen. Their faces flickered in the light, humans and aliens both. "You risk disgrace," one snapped. "How could you take in a street child, one of no value?" Another said coldly, "What will the others think when they hear this? It will make you look weak." The diplomat listened quietly, his golden eyes calm. When they finished, he spoke, his voice low but sharp. "Perhaps strength is not measured only in wealth or armies," he said. "Perhaps true power is in the courage to reward honesty, even when it comes from the lowest place." The council muttered among themselves, their faces stiff. But the diplomat ended the call with a wave, his decision already made. He turned and walked toward Lyra's chamber. The guards stepped aside reluctantly, their hands tightening on their weapons as she came into view. When he entered, Lyra stood quickly, her eyes wide. She bowed her head without thinking, unsure what to do. But the diplomat raised a hand gently. "No need for that," he said. "You are not my servant." Lyra blinked, unsure of his words. Why are you helping me?" she asked softly, her voice filled with confusion. The diplomat sat in a chair across from her, folding his hands. "Because you remind me of something this galaxy has forgotten," he said. "That even the smallest act of honesty is greater than all the lies of kings." Her heart ached at his words. She wanted to believe them, but the memory of hunger, of being kicked aside, of being invisible, still weighed heavy inside her. "You don't know me," she whispered. "I am nothing." The diplomat leaned forward, his gaze sharp. "You are not nothing, Lyra. You are proof that truth still lives." Silence filled the room, broken only by the soft hum of the walls. Lyra's throat tightened, tears rising again. She wanted to speak, but could not. The diplomat placed the wallet on the table beside them, its silver insignia glowing faintly. "This wallet is only metal and credits," he said. "But what you gave me was greater than wealth. You gave me trust." At that moment, one of the guards outside stepped in, his face tight with anger. "Excellency, forgive me, but this is a mistake," he said. "She is nothing but a thief waiting for her chance. Street rats never change." The diplomat's eyes burned, his voice turned to steel. "Leave this room," he ordered, his tone like thunder. The guard hesitated, then bowed stiffly and retreated. Lyra stood frozen, shocked at how he defended her. No one had ever spoken for her before. Her chest swelled with something strange, something she had never felt. Hope. The diplomat looked back at her, his expression softening again. "You must understand, Lyra, the galaxy will not welcome you easily," he said. "People fear what they do not understand, and they despise what reminds them of their failures." She nodded slowly, her fingers curling into the blanket. "I am not afraid," she whispered, though her voice trembled. The diplomat gave a faint smile. "Good, because your story has already left these walls," he said. "The streets are speaking of the beggar girl who returned the wallet untouched." He stood, his robe flowing as he moved toward the door. "Tomorrow, the city will know your face." Lyra's eyes widened. "Tomorrow," she repeated, almost in disbelief. "Yes," the diplomat said, his voice calm but full of weight. "Tomorrow they will see that even the forgotten can change the galaxy." As the door closed behind him, Lyra sat in silence, her heart racing. She did not yet know what tomorrow would bring, but she felt it in her bones. Something had shifted. Her life was no longer her own, and the galaxy was about to learn her name. The next morning, the city woke to whispers that spread like wildfire. Merchants in the market spoke of it, guards in the alleys repeated it, and even the nobles in their towers could not ignore it. A beggar girl had returned a diplomat's lost wallet untouched, and instead of punishment, she had been welcomed into his home. Some called it a miracle, others called it madness, but all agreed it was something no one could have imagined. Lyra sat in a room filled with sunlight. The walls glowed faint gold, and a soft breeze carried the scent of flowers from a garden beyond. She had never seen a garden before, not one with living colors. Her eyes followed butterflies that drifted across the air, their wings shimmering like tiny jewels. It felt unreal, like she had stepped into another world. Servants entered quietly, bringing her food on shining trays. They set it on the table without meeting her eyes, their movements stiff and cold. Some looked at her with pity, others with disdain. To them she was still only a street child, out of place among walls of wealth. Lyra noticed, but she kept her head down, remembering the diplomat's words. She ate slowly, savoring each bite. Her mind swirled with questions she could not answer. Why had he chosen her? Why had he defended her? Why had he spoken words of honor to a girl no one had cared about? Her hands trembled as she held the bread. Part of her wanted to trust him, but another part feared it would all vanish. Soon the diplomat entered, his robe flowing, his eyes calm and sharp. He carried himself with the weight of someone who had seen wars, treaties, and betrayals. Yet when he looked at her, his voice softened. "Did you rest well, Lyra?" he asked. She nodded, though her voice was quiet. "Yes, Excellency." He gave a faint smile. "You need not call me Excellency here," he said. "You are my guest." The words struck her like lightning. Guest, she thought. No one had ever called her that. She was a beggar, a forgotten shadow, but here she was, seated in sunlight, called a guest by one of the most powerful men in the city. Her chest tightened with emotion. She whispered, "Why me?" The diplomat studied her for a moment, his golden eyes steady. "Because you carry something rare," he said. "Something this galaxy has almost lost, truth and honor." His words felt heavy, almost too heavy for her small shoulders. She lowered her gaze, unsure if she could carry such a thing. But he placed a hand gently on the table, his voice strong. "You will not walk the streets hungry again," he said. "Not while I live." Outside the walls, rumors spread louder. In the taverns, men argued if she had tricked him. In the markets, women whispered if she would rise higher than her place. And in the alleys, the gangs cursed her name, furious that she had slipped away from their grasp. Everywhere, the story grew, shaping itself into legend before her eyes. That evening, the diplomat invited her to a hall filled with glowing lights. Nobles and envoys gathered, their robes shining, their eyes curious and sharp. They looked at her as if she were a strange creature, not sure whether to pity her or despise her. But she stood at his side, trembling yet proud. The diplomat raised his voice, carrying across the hall. "This child returned what was mine without taking a coin," he declared. "She is not of wealth or title, yet her honor is greater than most rulers I know." Gasps filled the hall. Whispers rose like waves. Some smiled, others frowned, but none could deny his words. Lyra's face burned, but she stood still, her heart racing. Later, when the hall emptied, she sat alone in a corner, her head full of voices. She did not know if she was ready for this world. But deep inside, a flame had been lit. She had been seen, defended, lifted, and now, she could not go back to being invisible. Her life had changed, and so had the eyes of the city. The diplomat watched from across the room, his face calm. He knew this was only the beginning. He knew the galaxy would not forgive such an act of kindness so easily. But he also knew that sometimes, the smallest spark could ignite a fire that no army could control. And in that spark stood Lyra, the girl who had returned a wallet. The story of the homeless alien girl traveled faster than ships across the stars. What had begun as whispers in the streets became news in the markets, then echoes in the halls of power. Traders told the tale as if it were legend, children repeated it with wide eyes, and even soldiers in the barracks spoke of it between their duties. Lyra's name spread, though many still called her only the beggar child who returned the wallet. But not everyone welcomed the story. Some nobles sneered, calling it weakness, a diplomat bending for a street rat. Others saw danger, fearing that if one child from the alleys could be raised to honor, the poor across the city might begin to believe in their own worth. And gangs in the dark corners cursed her name, furious that she had gained protection they could never steal. Inside the diplomat's residence, Lyra walked carefully through the halls. She still felt the stares of servants, still heard their whispered doubts. But something inside her had begun to change. Her back was straighter, her eyes lifted higher, as if she carried an invisible weight of destiny. She no longer thought only of hunger or cold. She began to wonder what her life might become. One afternoon, the diplomat called her to the council chamber. The room was wide, its floor marked with ancient symbols, its walls glowing with maps of star systems. Around the table sat officials and advisors, their eyes sharp, their robes heavy with authority. Lyra felt small again, but she stood where the diplomat had told her, by his side. The council began to argue, their voices filling the chamber. "This girl is nothing. Her story will pass in days. Why waste your time?" one said. "She is dangerous," another argued. "Her presence gives false hope to the poor. They will rise if they see her rise." But the diplomat raised a hand, silencing them, his voice strong. "You are blind if you cannot see the truth," he said. He turned to Lyra, his golden eyes steady. "This child carried honesty when no one else would. And if the people believe in her, it is because they are starved for truth." The room fell silent, the weight of his words pressing down on every ear. Lyra swallowed hard, feeling all their eyes on her. She wanted to shrink away, but instead she whispered, "I only did what was right." Her voice was small, but it cut through the silence like a blade. Some scoffed, others shifted uncomfortably, but the diplomat smiled. "Exactly," he said, "and sometimes what is right is the most dangerous thing of all." Later, when the council dismissed, Lyra stepped outside into the diplomat's garden. The air was fresh, the sky glowing with twin moons rising above the towers. She sat on the edge of a stone fountain, her reflection trembling in the water. For the first time, she began to understand that her choice on that cold street was no longer only hers. It belonged to the city, to the whispers, to the eyes that now followed her. As night fell, groups gathered outside the diplomat's residence. Some came to see if the story was true, others came to curse her name. Children from the streets looked up at the walls with hope, imagining that maybe one day they too could be seen. But nobles rode by in silver carriages, muttering of disgrace. The city was divided, and Lyra was at the center. Inside, the diplomat spoke to her quietly. "You must be careful, Lyra," he said. "The galaxy does not change without resistance." She looked at him, her eyes wide. "Do they hate me?" she asked. "Some do," he admitted, "but others are beginning to believe in you." Her chest tightened, the weight of both love and hate pressing upon her. She was only a girl, yet the galaxy seemed to lean closer each day, listening, watching, waiting. She whispered to herself, "I never asked for this." But deep inside, another voice rose, a voice that told her she could not run. That night, as she lay in her bed of warmth, she dreamt of her mother's voice again. "Honesty will bring light, even in the darkest place." The words echoed louder than ever before, filling her with a strange strength. When she awoke, she knew the diplomat had been right. Her story was no longer just about her. It was becoming something greater, and far beyond the city, in other worlds and other councils, her name had already begun to rise. A simple beggar girl had done what nobles could not, and the galaxy, restless and uncertain, was beginning to wonder what would come next. Days turned into weeks, and Lyra's story spread beyond the walls of the city. It traveled with traders across the stars, carried in the mouths of merchants, soldiers, and wandering travelers. Everywhere people repeated the tale of a homeless alien girl who found a diplomat's wallet and returned it untouched. Some told it as a fable of honor, others as a warning of weakness, but no one could ignore it. Within the city, the streets began to shift. Children who once begged in silence now looked up with a spark of hope. Mothers whispered Lyra's name to their little ones as proof that the forgotten could still be seen. And in the dark alleys, gangs gritted their teeth, angry that one of their kind had risen to honor instead of shadow. Lyra herself struggled to understand it all. She was still the same girl, her hands still scarred from hunger, her memories still full of cold nights. Yet every day she was taught by the diplomat's tutors, learning words, numbers, and histories she had never imagined. Her mind grew sharper, her voice stronger, though her heart remained humble. The diplomat watched closely, guiding her with patience. He treated her not as a pet, not as a tool, but as a student. In her he saw not only the girl who had returned his wallet, but the symbol she had become. "Do not fear the weight of their eyes," he told her. "Carry it, and one day it will turn into strength." Still, not everyone celebrated her rise. Some nobles sent letters dripping with anger, accusing the diplomat of breaking tradition. Others plotted quietly, hoping to humiliate her, to prove that a street child could never be more than dirt. Lyra felt their stares like knives when she walked into gatherings. But she kept her head high, remembering the night she had chosen truth over survival. One evening, The diplomat brought her to the central plaza. A crowd had gathered, thousands of eyes, human and alien alike. The air hummed with tension, voices buzzing like a swarm. Lyra's heart pounded as she stood beside him, her small figure dwarfed by the grand steps. The diplomat raised his hand, and silence fell. He spoke of her honesty, of her courage, of the choice that had changed her fate. Then, to the shock of many, he stepped aside, motioning for her to speak. Lyra froze, her throat tight, her hands trembling. But then she looked out at the faces before her. The children in rags at the edges, the merchants with their wide eyes, the nobles with their sharp sneers. She remembered her mother's words, soft and warm. Honesty will bring light, even in the darkest place. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward. Her voice wavered at first, but then grew steady. "I am Lyra," she said. "I was a beggar, a child of the streets. No one saw me. No one cared." The crowd stirred, whispers rising, but she pressed on. "One night I found something precious, something I could have kept, but I returned it, not because I wanted reward, but because it was not mine." Her eyes scanned the crowd, meeting the gaze of the poor, the rich, and the doubtful alike. "I had nothing, but I still had honesty, and that was enough." Her words cut through the plaza like a blade of light. Silence followed, heavy and deep. Then, from the back of the crowd, a single clap echoed. It spread slowly, then faster, until the sound filled the air. Some clapped with joy, others with reluctance, but no one could deny her courage. The diplomat's golden eyes glowed with pride as he placed a hand on her shoulder. "This girl," he said, his voice thundering across the plaza, "has reminded us of what we have forgotten." The crowd roared, some in agreement, some in anger, but the story had already grown beyond their control. Lyra's name would not fade, it would only grow. That night, as she sat in her chamber, she looked out the window at the stars. Her heart was heavy, but also full of warmth. She whispered softly, as if speaking to her mother's memory. "A single choice changed my life, and maybe it can change others too." Far away, in halls of power across the galaxy, her story was already being told. Some feared it, some honored it, but all remembered it. Lyra, the girl who had nothing, had given the galaxy something it had almost lost. The reminder that kindness and truth could still shake empires. And so her legacy began, not with wealth, not with armies, but with honesty. The homeless alien girl who returned a wallet had become the light in a galaxy drowning in shadows. And though her journey was only beginning, the galaxy would never forget her name.